So now we're here with Mitch Albom, who, among other things, at WJR is a national leader in the Michigan film industry, actually helped spawn the Michigan film industry in a lot of ways. It was your baby and you nurtured it. So we're here, Mitch, to talk a little bit about the news yesterday that Governor Synder plans on capping the film credit at $25 million, which most industry people feel like is the end of it.
Well, he's not capping; he's killing it. I mean, it's not tenable at that amount. In fact, you're almost better off not having a film program. I hate to say it at that little amount, because you won't have growth, you won't have new jobs, you won't have people sticking around. You'll just have a handful of people coming in and taking some state money for a break on a film that they make. That was why we suggested that when we created these things 4 years ago. We had a rate back then of, I don't know if it was 10% or it wasn't even in the ballpark. And we said, if you're going to do this, do it right. Jump in front of everybody, become a nation's leader. Why? Because they're not going to come here otherwise. Right. This is a gypsy business, and everybody understands that. But by the same token, it's a big business, and there are very few businesses that can just come into a state and start up just like that and start putting money and injecting it into the community and training people and using people on the fly. Most businesses, they come in, they have to build the plant, they have to take time to educate people to their way of doing things, all the rest of it. The movie business isn't like that. That's its curse and its blessing. Well, it worked. We went from a business of $2 million a year to $225 million in 2 years.
Wow.
So that's 100-fold. You find me another business that does 100-fold, and I'll say we should keep that business too, no matter what it costs.
Right. And where would it have gone? I mean, that's an increasing.
Where was it going? I know how much money has already been invested and planned on this film. It's more than that this year. I mean, we finally, as everything was going exactly on the clockwork that I told Jennifer Granholm about, and Mike Binder and a couple other people who helped form this thing. First, you're going to get small movies, then you're going to get slightly bigger movies, then the studios are going to get interested and they're going to come in, then you're going to start building your own infrastructure, you're going to build your own studios, own post-production facilities. Eventually, you'll stop giving the money away and you'll start bringing more and more of it in. More and more of the people in town will be trained and qualified and they'll work on the films, and you will have developed an industry, but you got to give it time to grow. Well, it was going just like that, and then we had this guy come in who basically looks at the world the way a president of Gatewide Computers looks at the world. I want the best tax rate for my company where I exist, and that's it. Well, that's well and good for him, and that's why Gateway was located in South Dakota for all those years, I suppose. But we're not South Dakota, and we're not going to get a film industry, and we're not going to keep young people unless we have to put a little milk outside the door for the cat. That's how it works. But there's nothing wrong with that. People have been doing that forever. He came in and basically and misled a lot of people, including myself, face to face, telling them that things were safe or it was going to be at least $100 million, and then boom, $25 million, which is literally a drop in the bucket, and it's almost not worth it. And it's an absolute gut punch to a lot of people, who have a lot more in it than just me. I mean, I have a lot of time and human effort and human equity and all that, but I didn't invest millions of dollars like guys have done in building studios here that are basically going to become white elephants. So if there was ever a time for sort of community action, at least people who like this business, I'm not telling every citizen in the state of Michigan, if they don't care, they don't care. But people who are affected by this need to rise up and get to their legislators and say, hey, look, okay, that was his budget. That's what a governor does. But you don't have to accept it. And we should make an exception for this particular industry. It doesn't work like other industries. And if we can allocate enough money for it to keep it going at the rate that it was, we can be fiscally responsible as well as keeping this industry going. Otherwise, you're going to not only going to send a whole load of people right back out of here who moved in, you are going to discourage so many citizens who finally thought of Michigan as a place, hey, we're growing, we got something hip, it's young, it's creative, it's not just the auto business. And kids were staying here for the first time instead of immediately thinking they got to go to Chicago or New York. You're going to take all those people and you're going to slam their head on the ground and say, don't believe anything the state does for you. We look like fools. Fools on a national scale. We came out with this program and jumped ahead of everybody for 3 years and then said, that's it, we're pulling the tablecloth out, and that's the kind of state Michigan is. We start things and then we stop things, and we start them and we stop them, and maybe we'll start something else. The Wall Street Journal yesterday
said Michigan closes its curtains. That was the headline.
And the LA Times said, get off my lawn. That's what the Michigan, they had a picture of Clint Eastwood with the gun, and they said, Michigan governor says to Hollywood, get off my lawn. That's what we look like. We look like a state that can't make up its mind, tries something, and kills it. All because this guy's got it in his head that the only way that anything's going to work in this state is if we get business taxes lowered to a certain degree. And he's really throwing a baby out with the bathwater here.
So there is a reverberation of the effect, the Michigan effect, our imaging, right? We all saw how powerful the Chrysler ad was positively. What other businesses are going to say, I can't trust the state of Michigan because we had this in place. It was supposed to be so many years and they pulled the plug.
I wouldn't come to do anything that had to do with the government of Michigan. Right now, if I saw that, why would I? And unless anybody think, well, you know, he's upset because it's not costing me a dime. Okay, I'll give you a perfect example. I haven't told anybody.
Okay.
There's a movie about to be contracted of my latest book, Have a Little Faith, which was a story of a Detroit church here in town.
Sure.
All right? Nice movie deal. It's going to be very high profile. In the contract, I demanded that they film it in Detroit, at the church, at the real place. And they said, that's fine, we'll come to Detroit. But I got the contract back the other day, and it said, we agree to film the thing in Detroit as long as the incentives remain in place.
Oh my!
Well, we're going to lose that. And that film if this stays, this film of a book that I wrote here about a person here in a church here, whatever, will end up getting filmed in Toronto or someplace like that about Detroit. Now, does it hurt me financially? Not at all. I get paid exactly the same. I don't lose one dime over it. What it hurts is the people who could have worked in the film, and the church itself who could have had that attention, and the story of Detroit that needs to be told for real with real Detroiters and real Detroit in the background and not fake Detroit that's somewhere in Toronto. That's a real life, one example of hundreds or thousands of examples of what this thing cost us. Now,
that may go south, and some projects have already, as of yesterday,
I'm sure
started. I talked to a casting director. They got a movie canceled yesterday.
Because the movie business, as I said at the beginning of our conversation, is very mobile and quick, and they go where they're going to be able to operate. It's very expensive to launch a movie. It's very expensive to plan a movie. And once you're into things like pay or play with actors, where when you sign a contract, they get their money no matter what. No business that operates like that is going to step into a chancy environment. And we have just cast ourselves now as chancy. We may cast ourselves as dead if nothing gets done. But right now, we moved into chancy. Oh, they're gone. There's no way Detroit 187 will come back here and film again. No way. But why would they? They have no idea if there's money being allotted. Even, if they're picked up again, they'll find another. That'll be interesting. Detroit 187 filmed in Chicago, or some other place where they have incentives. That he doesn't care. And look, I'm not here to try to turn Rick Snyder into a different person. He is who he is, but he's not the only person who has a voice in the state of Michigan. At least not as I'm concerned.
And people. So we've talked about the businesses, Mitch. It's the people that this is what is so important. They grabbed this industry. They retrained themselves, went back to film school. They started businesses training animals and prop things. I'm hearing the stories. I'm sure you're hearing the stories. Don't those stories of people that have hope, you mentioned young people, aren't those the kind of stories that lawmakers, the legislature, should really care about those jobs?
Well, the legislators should care about those stories, and the people who tell those stories should be contacting their legislators. A guy who has a costume shop that was just about to go out of business on account of the lousy economy and was saved by the film business coming in, a hotel that never saw any business in February or August, whatever, and all of a sudden had business and could hire extra employees. These are all real stories that can get repeated over and over again.
Somerset Inn.
Well, when that goes away, when the business goes away, what do you think is going to take its place? Do you think because Rick Snyder is creating a low tax-based thing for certain kind of corporations that's going to help these mom and pop places? Not at all. They're going to close, and those people are going to move. And there goes, when somebody moves, that's another abandoned house or another house on the market that doesn't sell. That's tax-based revenue that doesn't. That's why these numbers are so ridiculous, Nancy, because you can't really measure the ripple effect. How do you know how many people moved into Michigan in the last 3 years because of the promise of film? How do you know how many people didn't leave Michigan because of the promise of film? Well, every one of those people pays taxes. They may be working as waiters right now. They may be working as real estate agents right now, but they're here because they have a dream. All right? How much of Los Angeles is supported by people who want to get in to the movie business? Not people who are in it, but they're there because they want to get into it because it's there. Well, you can't measure them. They come out with these studies in Lansing. Well, it's only worth this and it's worth that.
Per dollar. They're not measuring any. They're not capturing any of that.
Can't measure any of the ripple effect.